And hi, and welcome back to the National Cathedrals Conference podcast for 2022. And again, it's been a really long day, 1 hour 11th hour. So a bit longer than yesterday, but we're powering through. How are you feeling, Jordan?
Tired, but accomplished a lot, so it's all good.
That's true.
Still having fun.
Yeah, it's definitely still having fun. So today, we focused on two themes. We focused on social justice, which will be the main theme of this podcast. And we also focused on environmental justice. So in regards to environmental justice, we have a bit of a detour.
Yeah.
Detour's the right word. From our usual podcasting, and we actually have an interview with Aurora.
Arosha.
An interview with Arosha, which you can find on the
YouTube channel. Yeah,
it's definitely something you should check out. We were so lucky and privileged to be able to have such a interesting and thought-provoking interview. So, summary of today in regards to social justice. We had the morning talks as the morning focused on social justice. We had cathedral art, God's mission, and social justice. But what do these mean? Jordan, please tell us, what does this mean?
So the arc in this context of the cathedral is that the cathedral is the arc. It's the place where you can bring new ideas, like has been happening over the past few days with, social justice, racial justice, environmental justice. And you can bring them, we can discuss them, and there's no judgment around these ideas. You can say your opinion, everyone gets a chance to speak, and there's a lot of discussion around them. And then what happens tomorrow, day 3, is there's more workshops starting, and that's more action planning of how do we go out into the world.
Yeah, I'm really excited for some of the workshops. We'll definitely be running through some of the workshops that were available and the ones we were lucky enough to attend. I'm really excited for the workshops. But anyway, yeah. I've interrupted you. Continue, Jordan.
Yeah, so the second part of the Ark mission that they've promoted is that the doors of the Ark open, because in the story of Noah and his Ark, once the flood ends, the doors of the ship open and they go out back into the world and they repopulate the earth. With this, it's more allegorical. It's not animals, it's ideas, to take them out into the world and here's the ideas we've got and here's how we can make a better community. And to use a word that Austin used today, who was the first speaker for social justice, to create a new brotherhood among all humans.
That's such an eloquent way you've put it. You've condensed what was such a hard speech to digest. We all kind of were sat in the media room like, wow, that was a lot. We listened to it and you've summarised that so beautifully. So what would you say in regards to the other two with God's mission and social justice? How would you summarise the other two speeches that we had?
Well, I would say that God's mission ultimately in the eyes of social justice is to spread those ideas. And one thing that the Pope Francis, because this speech from Austin was centered around Pope Francis' letter, which his new book is written based around that letter, is how do we foster a more community-based Catholic Church rather than one that when crisis strikes, it falls inward and it does what it was planning to do anyways, but it doesn't look at the outside world, it doesn't look at the poor, it doesn't look at all of the issues that are going on outside, it doesn't speak to the downtrodden or those that may be hard on their luck. It, offers a helping hand to them. So it's not a thing of, a lot of people in society can be accused of doing this, of throwing help down to the people that need it in a way that is patronizing of here's the help, but it doesn't actually do anything because you haven't bothered to invest time. Instead, it's how do we lift those people up and elevate them, but also how do we learn from them? What do they have to teach us? And that ultimately is God's mission.
I'm absolutely down from shocked. That's really struck a chord. I completely get what you mean, and I think it links so nicely back to this idea that Sir John Major was saying of the trickling down and making sure that things are in place by the government and more widely that money is trickled down and provisions are trickled down to make sure that you have this levelling up. Everyone kept mentioning levelling up in Britain and making sure that the more deprived areas of the UK and people in general are uplifted from poverty, and that we need to have practical solutions of uplifting these people and not just hoping that by getting their GCSE results this will make them better. And actually they were talking about children a lot. Who was talking about children a lot?
Mark Russell,
Yes,
who was the third speaker. He was so impassioned.
Oh my God. Watching Mark Russell, if you have not had the pleasure of listening to Mark Russell speak, you need to find a way. He was maybe the most passionate speaker I have ever met, and he talks so much about we should be focusing on children's happiness, because that is what is going to make such a difference in this world. Because if they're happier, they can do more things with happiness. They will probably get better results. They will be better people to other people. And that's just such an empowering message. And Mark Russell has worked so tirelessly hard to fight for children's rights. But what I really took from his speech is he's not fighting for children's rights. He is fighting essentially for what children need. As in, he is using his platform as an adult with connections and influence to raise children's voices. He's not using his voice and his opinions. He's literally going to children going, what do you need? He talked about children saying they were having to pick schools based on the price of blazer. And then he was going to NPs and going, do you think this is right? And they go, no. They're like, well, this is what people are doing.
Yeah.
And like that, he got things sorted. And it's so empowering that an adult is actually listening to the young people and what young people need and think, and using his privilege and ability to help them directly exactly what they need. I don't know what your take on that is, Jordan.
Yeah, so one of the things that you said was before, the GCSE, the A-level, etc. results come, happiness for a child should come first. And I guess one of the wider criticisms that you would say is that essentially is, whether you agree with the system as a whole or not, that is one of the failures of capitalism, is essentially saying that if you are successful in life, which begins for a child, in this case at the age of 11, 12, when you first get your GCSE results, then you will be happy. Then you're on the path to success all the way through life, which just isn't true. And instead, what Mark was essentially saying is that if you raise a happy child, then the success will follow. And the success will follow, the hard work will follow, the passion will follow. All those things come after a happy child. And I thought that was really important to say society has it backwards. And I feel like a lot of the talks yesterday and today have basically said we're doing things this way when in fact it should be the other way around. So that's actually what I think a lot of this conference is about anyways, is, well, the church in the past has done X before it's done Y, when in fact it should have done Y to do X.
Yeah.
So it's said to, the poor, well, this is the help you're going to get because this is the help that you need, when in fact it should have been saying, what do you need? What does your small, tiny community need to be better?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it brings this, again, to this theme of community we were talking about, is that Newcastle Cathedral does so well, is listening to their community. What does their community need, and how can they then implement that, and looking for the people who aren't there and fostering community. And it really shows that National Cathedrals Conference, even though community isn't a definite theme of it and it isn't the theme that they've gone with, it's permeating every conversation. I think you agree, Jordan, and community just seems so much of the centre of that. And I think partly that is what church and faith is. It's finding a community.
Yeah.
And how can you help serve that community? And it really seems like the church is having such more of a heavy focus on that and going, right, what is our community? Because our community has changed from 20 years ago. It's completely different to the people we're surrounded by, the people who have voices, what people believe in, what people don't believe in, the situations we are. It's a completely new world. And I think that is the theme of different country, different church. I think a really interesting point we should talk about is, even if we can't get to the bottom of this, something that people should definitely start to think about is, we were talking about children and community, and people are becoming less religious. I think you can agree with me, Jordan, on that sense, and less faith-driven. And it's so interesting to think how the church could not tackle this as in, how can we get more people into church? More of how can we help these solutions when people are becoming less religious. We want to help children, but children don't have that much faith in God anymore comparative to years gone by when families would go to the church. I'm not saying that people don't believe, but it's definitely proportionally less now. And I think that's really, how do you think, and what's your general opinion on how can the church start to solve social justice when people are less religious and some parishes are struggling to keep the doors on, as everyone keeps saying?
Well, I think one of the main things, and I've heard several people say this from the conference anyways, is the key isn't attempting to make more people religious, and it's also not attempting to make more people have faith in God or Jesus. The key is, how do we foster better lives for people? And if that happens to be in a cathedral, then that's just where it happens to be. And I think ultimately, if you're fostering a better life for people and you're doing it in a cathedral around reverends, vicars, deans, that sort of thing, then the high likelihood is that some faith will follow, whether that's, you end up going to church every Sunday, you're there all the time, you follow a strict Christian life with strict Christian values, or you just have this spiritual sense that there is something out there that guides you. And I think that faith follows the action, and I think a lot of people at this conference seem to have understood that.
Yeah, definitely. I'm listening to so many people speak, you really get this idea of, it seems to be less of we need to find people to believe in God. It's when we just want to make things better. And if we can get people to find that through God, or straight away, or eventually they come to that conclusion, or we can help them in a direction that might lead them to God or not. It really seems like there's just this overwhelming sense to help people, and God can be that solution. That it's this, you were talking about this idea from Z to Y instead of Y to Z. It seems like it's not necessarily God's first, it's God's second at the moment, as in that's not the focus of what so many people are talking about. It's about fostering that community and helping people, and it just gives me so much hope that things can get better, and that when people are talking about these issues, they're not just doing it because it's the right thing to do. It's like, no, we have a general passion and want to talk about these things and help people. And if people believe in God, that's great, but that isn't necessarily straight away the focus is to get people always in the door.
Yeah, I would say that's true, but the one thing I would say is, yes, in these conversations it seems like God comes second, but at the same time I think there is an emphasis on where we might not be discussing God all the time, but these actions are God-led.
Oh, yeah.
He's operating in the background all the time. This is God's work. Even if you're an atheist or you're an agnostic, you might not feel it, but the emphasis by the cathedral and the speakers is, this is God's work.
Oh, yeah. You get the sense that, although we're not mentioning him, he's there.
Yeah.
And I think that's something really quite beautiful, is that he doesn't need to be mentioned all the time, because the work that is being done here is for God, because God loves everyone and sees value in everything, which is really quite lovely when you think about it.
Yeah, I think you have to think the most powerful people in modern society on a much more materialistic level are the ones that you don't see, the ones that make a lot of the decisions on out in public. So if we're viewing him as more withdrawn, he's not present in all the conversations, but he is there for conversation if need be, or if it's something that someone wants. I think that almost makes him much more powerful than being present all of the time.
Yeah, I'd love to hear what and read what the viewers think of all of this. Obviously, please engage with the conversation. That's what this podcast is here for. It's to wrap up what's happened with the day and to engage in more conversation, and to make sure that it's an open space where people can disagree with us. That's absolutely fine. Like, creating discussion is what we're here for, and I hope that this podcast can do that. Is there anything else you want to add, Jordan? Any more main points you took away from today? Because I know you were the main one focusing on social justice.
I would say that, we've already touched on it, but this idea that in one of the speakers, the second speaker in the morning, touched on this, Selena Stone, she said, solidarity cannot just be for optics. You can't push a person who might have generally been excluded in the past, and you can't push a person like that in front of the camera and just go, this is your 15 minutes. and then once it's done, you shove them away and they're no longer relevant. Actually, those people need to be in the rooms most of the time. If you're making decisions about their lives, about their communities, they need to be there the majority of the time.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Because it's important that when conversations like this are happening, is that the groups are represented.
Yeah.
And that people, certain groups aren't making the decisions for them, because that's not right. I think but it's also important to make sure that even if they aren't there, conversations are still happening.
Yeah.
You can have conversations with certain groups not there, and make sure you are thinking about them, and because not always people are going to be there.
Yeah.
The groups you're talking about.
Yeah.
Make the attempt to have them there.
Yeah.
But if they can't be, that the conversation doesn't stop. And I think that's a really beautiful point she was making. I feel like this has been such a insightful and thoughtful conversation.
Yeah.
And we've barely scraped the barrel with
Yeah.
anything. We've only just plucked a few feathers off these conversations, as the conversations we're having today were so in depth that you could write a whole podcast on one speech, let alone all three we're discussing. So I hope that's giving you a good overview of what happened today. Definitely check out blog posts that will be written more in depthly on these topics, and checking out the Twitter to see highlighted quotes. Instagram might have some content on, so please check that out. And again, reply, discuss in the comments, create discussion. That's what we're here for. But it's been such a lovely speaking to you again, Jordan, and I look forward to speaking to you again tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll definitely be back. I've enjoyed this again.
Yeah, I've enjoyed it again. Remember to engage, reach us with the hashtag NCC2022, and have a lovely rest of the day. And we'll both look forward to speaking at you.
But don't forget to check out the other interview as well.
Oh,
That's
yes,
important.
Jordan. Yes, you've reminded me. Don't forget to check out the interview. It's so interesting. Have a lovely rest of your evening, day, whenever, and we'll look forward to recording and digesting what happens tomorrow at the National Cathedrals Conference 2022. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.